I still remember the first day I walked through the doors of my new school, a day that would change everything. I was just another quiet transfer, determined to keep to myself and blend into the background. But sometimes fate has its own plans. As I navigated the crowded hallways of Clearview High, I could feel a mix of anticipation and nervousness that no newcomer ever truly escapes. I had already experienced too many new beginnings in my short life, each one marked by whispers and sideways glances. This time, however, something felt different. I knew that in a place where everyone seemed to have a defined role, my story was about to take a surprising turn. Before I could settle into the routine of finding my locker or choosing a spot for lunch, I caught the attention of someone notorious. Logan Brooks. Known for his dominating presence and effortless confidence, he had earned his reputation as the school's undisputed king of the hallways. Without warning, a calculated push sent my books scattering, and I found myself standing in the middle of a crowd that was all too eager to watch the drama unfold. I kept my head down, silently willing myself to disappear, even as Logan's mocking tone cut through the chatter. I'd learned long ago that the best way to handle bullies was to stay silent, but deep inside, I knew I wasn't as fragile as they believed. Later that day, when I felt the sting of isolation most acutely, everything shifted in an instant. Just as I was resigned to another day of unnoticed suffering, a rumbling engine filled the air, and a sleek jet-black car pulled up beside me. Out stepped a man whose presence radiated strength and quiet determination, a presence so powerful that even the notorious Logan seemed to shrink in his shadow. For the first time, I wasn't just the new girl being picked on. I was the daughter of Victor Steele, a name that carried weight beyond any high school rumor, a name that reminded everyone that true strength often comes from where you least expect it. In that moment, I realized that my identity was not defined by the cruelty of others or the whispers in the hallways. Instead, it was shaped by resilience and the unwavering support of someone who believed in me unconditionally. I had a secret advantage, one that wasn't about fighting back with fists, but with the power of truth and dignity. I wasn't going to stoop to Logan's level. Instead, I chose to let his actions speak for themselves. Now, as I share this chapter of my journey on Acts of Kindness stories, I want you to know that sometimes the quiet ones hold the most unexpected power. My story isn't about revenge or anger. It's about discovering inner strength, standing tall in the face of adversity, and letting integrity light the way forward. I invite you to join me as I continue to navigate the twists and turns of high school life, a journey where every challenge is a chance to grow, and every act of kindness has the potential to rewrite the narrative. I spent the rest of that day in a haze of conflicting emotions and quiet determination. After the shock of that first confrontation with Logan Brooks in the crowded hallways of Clearview High, I felt the weight of every whispered comment and sidelong glance. I knew I was being watched, and every step I took was measured, as if my very presence was a statement that I would no longer accept being pushed aside. The memory of my books spilling across the floor and the sting of humiliation still lingered, but so did the promise of a turning point that was only just beginning. During class, I sat at the back of the room, letting the murmurs of my classmates wash over me like background noise. I wasn't expecting sympathy or validation. I simply accepted that my story was different. I had moved schools too many times to be surprised by the inevitable gossip that accompanies a new face. Yet, as the day unfolded, I became increasingly aware that my silence had started to speak louder than any confrontation ever could. I watched Logan with a mix of curiosity and resolve. Every time he cast his eyes in my direction, there was a flicker, a momentary crack in the armor of his well-rehearsed bravado. It was as if he, too, felt the pressure of expectations, of a reputation that was beginning to falter. Lunchtime arrived, and I chose a seat on the edge of the bustling cafeteria, a place where I could observe without being the center of attention. I kept to myself, carefully picking at my meal while my mind replayed the earlier events. I couldn't shake the memory of his mocking tone or the way his friends snickered at my expense. They were all part of a system, a hierarchy built on power and fear, that had ruled these corridors for as long as anyone could remember. But today something felt off. The usual certainty in their laughter was replaced by hesitant glances and uncertain whispers, especially when Logan's eyes met mine across the room. The tension in the cafeteria was palpable. I could see that the balance of power was shifting ever so slightly. I tried to ignore the stares, but the burden of those looks made it hard not to feel exposed. Every detail was etched in my mind. The way I carefully avoided his line of sight, the determination in my step as I moved from one end of the room to the other, and the small, almost imperceptible smile that tugged at the corners of my mouth. I wasn't trying to start anything, but I was also not willing to be another victim. I had learned early on that strength often lay in resilience and patience, in waiting for the right moment to let truth and integrity dismantle cruelty from within. After the final bell rang, I gathered my things and left the classroom with the steady rhythm of someone who had nothing left to prove. As I made my way through the hallways, I sensed that the day was far from over. The corridors, usually filled with the raucous energy of a typical school day, now carried a quiet tension, as if every student was holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. I kept walking with deliberate purpose, the memory of my earlier confrontation serving as both a reminder of my own worth and a challenge to those who tried to undermine it. That afternoon, I found myself in the parking lot, a place that had always felt like an afterthought, a mere transition between school and home. But today, it became the stage for a dramatic shift. I remember the moment clearly. As I reached the lot, my heart pounded with a mix of apprehension and anticipation, knowing that Logan would not simply let the day end without one final act. Sure enough, there he was, leaning casually against his car. His eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that belied his earlier nonchalance. His presence was almost tangible, a silent dare to challenge the delicate new order I was beginning to establish. Without a word, I slowed my pace, meeting his gaze head-on. The silence between us was profound, a conversation held not in words but in the charged space of mutual understanding and unspoken truths. He tried to break it with a casual remark, questioning why I carried myself with such an air of indifference. I could tell that beneath his carefully constructed mask of confidence, there was uncertainty. I spoke softly, my voice carrying not anger or fear but a quiet assurance that I had grown beyond the need for validation from someone who relied solely on intimidation. The conversation that followed was not the sort that could be reduced to a series of simple insults or taunts. Instead, it was an exchange of unspoken challenges. I could see the battle within him, the struggle to maintain a facade of power while grappling with the knowledge that his own actions were unraveling. I reminded him, in a tone that was calm yet piercing, that true strength wasn't about asserting dominance over others but about rising above the need to do so. My words were measured, not meant to humiliate but to reflect back the truth of his own vulnerabilities. I spoke of the value of compassion, of understanding that the most significant victories are often those won over our own inner demons. As I left the parking lot that day, the impact of that brief encounter stayed with me. I realized that every experience, no matter how painful, was an opportunity to learn and grow. I understood that standing up for myself wasn't about defeating someone else. It was about affirming my own identity and paving a path that was true to who I was. I carried that lesson with me as I walked through the halls the next day, fully aware that the fallout from yesterday's events would soon become public. It wasn't long before the whispers and rumors began to circulate. The once unshakable facade of Logan Brooks started to crumble as more and more students learned about the events of that day. The digital age had a way of amplifying every act, every word, and every misstep, and soon the story of what had transpired was being shared widely across social media and among the student body. Screenshots of messages and recordings of conversations began to appear on lockers and in online threads. The content wasn't just petty insults. It was a litany of hurtful, degrading comments that painted a picture of someone who had built his identity on cruelty. I watched as the tide of public opinion shifted, and it became clear that the very foundation upon which Logan had built his reputation was collapsing. I found myself at the center of this storm, not as a villain but as a catalyst for change. The power dynamics that had once favored bullies were now in question, and students began to see that fear and intimidation were not the marks of true leadership. In the midst of this upheaval, I remained steady, focused on the lessons I had learned about integrity and self-worth. I refused to engage in further conflict, knowing that every act of retaliation would only serve to perpetuate a cycle of negativity. Instead, I continued to move through each day with quiet dignity, letting the truth of my actions speak louder than any confrontation ever could. Over time, the effects of that singular moment began to ripple through the entire school. The usual chatter in the hallways was replaced with thoughtful conversations about respect, empathy, and the courage it takes to stand up for what is right. I started receiving nods of acknowledgement and even smiles from students who had once been too afraid to speak up. Teachers and administrators took notice, and gradually the atmosphere shifted toward one of accountability and growth. It was not a dramatic revolution overnight, but a slow, steady transformation that began with each individual decision to choose kindness over cruelty. Every day, I reminded myself of the importance of patience and understanding. I learned that change rarely comes from a single act of defiance. It is nurtured through a series of small, consistent moments that build up to something far greater than any one person's anger or fear. I began sharing my experiences not to boast or seek sympathy, but to offer a different perspective, a way to see strength in vulnerability and courage in quiet resilience. In sharing my journey on acts of kindness stories, I hope to inspire others to embrace their own inner power and to understand that our actions, no matter how small, can create ripples that extend far beyond ourselves. There were times when the echoes of the past threatened to pull me back into the darkness of doubt. I remembered how easy it was to be consumed by the need to retaliate, to prove that I was not weak. But I also remembered the moment when I chose to trust in the power of truth over the lure of immediate satisfaction. I chose to believe that when someone's actions are built on cruelty, the only way for them to truly redeem themselves is to confront their own weaknesses. That belief sustained me, even when the whispers grew louder and the pressure to conform to the old ways of behavior seemed overwhelming. In those moments of introspection, I realized that my journey was not just about surviving high school, it was about transforming the very essence of how we interact with one another. I saw that every act of kindness, every moment of empathy, had the potential to reshape our community and to build bridges where there had once been walls. I began to understand that the true measure of a person's strength lies not in their ability to overpower others, but in their willingness to lift them up. This realization fueled my determination to stay true to my values, even when it meant standing alone against the tide. The experience with Logan Brooks had a profound impact on me. It forced me to examine my own beliefs about power, respect, and the ways in which we choose to confront injustice. I discovered that courage is not about loud declarations or physical confrontations. It is about the quiet determination to do what is right, even when it's hard. I learned that standing up for myself did not require me to become someone I wasn't. It only required me to be honest about who I truly was. Each day, as I navigated the challenges of school life, I carried that lesson with me. I knew that my story was just one of many, but I also believed that by sharing it, I could help spark a conversation about empathy, understanding, and the power of resilience. This period of my life became a turning point. A moment when I realized that the labels and expectations imposed by others did not have to define me. I began to see that every challenge was an opportunity to learn and grow, a chance to shape my character in ways that went far beyond the surface. I was determined to use my experiences as a platform for positive change, to show that even in the face of cruelty, there is always a way to rise above and to find strength in vulnerability. As I continued to document my journey on acts of kindness stories, I kept revisiting the idea that true power comes from within. I observed how the simple act of remaining calm, of choosing to respond with integrity rather than anger, could transform not only my own life but also the lives of those around me. I saw that when people are given the space to be themselves, when they are treated with respect and empathy, the entire atmosphere changes. What began as a personal battle against bullying evolved into a broader movement of self-empowerment and collective accountability. Every experience, every moment of doubt, and every small victory along the way became a testament to the fact that change is possible. I found solace in knowing that by remaining true to my values, I could help foster an environment where kindness and respect were not just ideals, but everyday realities. In sharing these moments, I hope to remind others that no matter how insurmountable a challenge might seem, there is always a way to overcome it through perseverance, honesty, and the unwavering belief in the power of goodness. In those long hours spent reflecting on the events that had transpired, I came to understand that the scars left by cruelty do not have to be marks of shame. They can be the very symbols of our strength and our ability to transform pain into progress. I saw the beauty in every quiet moment of resistance and recognized that true change is built on a foundation of small, deliberate choices. Each time I held my head high despite the whispers, each time I chose to believe in the possibility of a kinder, more compassionate future, I was rewriting the narrative of not just my own life, but of our entire community. That journey, with all its twists and turns, taught me that while the world may sometimes be unkind, the courage to stand up and be different can light the way for others. It is a reminder that our true power lies in our ability to embrace our own worth and to inspire those around us to do the same. And even as I continue to face challenges that test my resolve, I remain steadfast in the belief that every act of kindness, every moment of self-respect, has the power to create a lasting legacy of positive change. As I look back on everything that unfolded, I realize that the journey was never about proving my worth to someone else. It was about discovering the strength that lies within me. Every whispered word, every sideways glance, and every act of cruelty was transformed into a lesson in resilience and self-respect. I witnessed a shift not just in the dynamics of our school, but in the way people began to understand that real power comes from lifting each other up, rather than tearing one another down. In the days that followed, the change was undeniable. The halls, once ruled by fear and the echoes of bullying, gradually filled with conversations about respect and the courage to be kind. I saw peers who had once felt trapped by labels begin to stand tall and speak up, their voices resonating with the same truth that had set me free. It wasn't an overnight revolution, but a slow, steady reminder that every small act of decency contributes to a much larger transformation. Now, as I share this story with you on Acts of Kindness Stories, I want you to know that you too have the power to spark change, no matter how daunting the challenge may seem. Whether you're facing bullying, isolation, or simply feeling lost in the noise of everyday life, remember that your inner strength and dignity can light the way for others. We all have a role to play in creating environments where empathy overcomes cruelty and where kindness becomes the norm rather than the exception. If this story resonates with you, if you see a part of your own struggles in mine, or if you believe that one person's courage can inspire many, I invite you to join this movement. Please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and spread the message of compassion and strength. Help us reach 10,000 subscribers on Acts of Kindness Stories so that we can continue to share stories that empower and uplift, creating a ripple effect of positive change in our communities. Thank you for being here and for choosing to stand with those who believe in kindness and respect. Let's continue to build a future where every act of compassion writes a new chapter in our shared story.